Welcome to TREKnological, a Star Trek shakedown. This is a short form podcast hosted by
Two.
two hardworking dads who love two. That's a callback. That's a callback. We're two hardworking dads who love to talk about Trek. I am Captain Schaff, and with me each week, side by side in our co-captain's chairs, is co-captain
I'm doing
Vactor. How are
well.
you,
I'm a little
Vactor?
under the weather, but this is one of my favorite parts of the week, so I have to do it. I have to.
Yes. Yes. Well, I'm sorry to hear that you're not feeling 100%. I'm also kind of feeling like I might be getting something. My 6-month-old Sage has a teething cold, and I'm thinking that she might have shared a little bit of a cold with me, but that's okay. I'm glad to hear that you're on the mend, though. I know that you're doing better than you were, so that's good. Now, for our listeners, each week we'll be traveling to a new planet to seek out new Trek news, as well as sharing our thoughts of Star Trek Prodigy Season 1. And as a bonus, we'll be recounting our adventures in fatherhood with our weekly segment called Boldly Dadding. Now, without further ado, I say we go ahead and set a course for the nearest planet,
Sir,
Maximum
course
Warp.
laid in.
I've got the need for speed. Captain Vactor, please meet me in the transporter room where we'll beam down to the planet's surface to search for
Sir,
some
on
Trek
my
news.
way.
Two to beam down. Two. All right, look, we're on this planet. I don't even know what it looks like. All right, very good. That's improv. Captain Vactor, can you please scan the planet's surface for any sign of Trek news?
Ooh, I found some Trek news. Captain Shaw, here's some of the highlights. So we can find
All
all of
right.
the Trek news in our show notes, but the ones that we wanted to focus on this week are Zachary Quinto says that Star Trek 4 doesn't feel real. And we've been following this news. All the cast didn't even know it was being written, didn't know it was going on. Um, I don't know if this movie is real either, Shoff. I don't know what's going on with Star Trek 4.
No, it
Yeah.
certainly doesn't feel
So
real.
very not good news coming out of that because
No.
yeah.
I hope it happens, but I want them to take their time. Like, if it's a question of making a good story, take their time to make it happen. Like, some information came out about the planned sequel that was supposed to have Chris Hemsworth come back as George Kirk and that whole thing. And I gotta say, it didn't sound like the premise for a very
That's
good
a shame.
movie. So yeah, so I'm glad they're not going that route. But I just hope they take the time to make something that's really meaningful
Yeah.
and memorable.
Something that will be memorable to comic book fans. The first ever Star Trek comic book sold for a record price, a near mint first edition Star Trek comic sold for thousands at a heritage auction sale. Shuff,
Ooh.
have you ever read this first issue of the Star Trek comic from 1967?
No, I do enjoy comic books, but I don't read a ton of Star Trek comic books, and I don't have a good excuse for it. But I will say that you and I have, well, I kind of found it first, but you and I both love the Year Five comic book series that's available. I think we were
Mm-hmm.
reading it on Comixology, and it's a fantastic story. I haven't finished it. I know it's like multiple volumes, but it really feels like you're
Yeah.
watching an episode
Yep.
of TOS. It's
So I
awesome.
would highly recommend that comic book. I also have not checked out this first issue, but sold for in the 20,000s. I'm sorry, for $46,500 in a near mint
46,000. Wow.
copy of it. Shaw rated as CGC 9.6. So
Rated M
this
for
is something that
mature.
my dad would tell me he had. He told me that he had all these limited edition comics. Had oh yeah, I had Superman #1, Batman #1. I had them all, but they were all thrown out. He said when he went into the military and he came back to get his stuff, he was like everything was gone. All my baseball
Oh
cards, all my
no.
comic books. He said I would add millions, but um, Who knows?
That stinks, man. I've told my brother, because my brother and I used to play with action figures and stuff all the time, and we gave away or sold at like garage sales like all of our action figures when we were kids. And I'm thinking about it now, like we had some really great stuff, and it was like at the pinnacle, I think, of like action figure times when in the 80s, early 90s, like they had some amazing figures, especially like the Uncanny X-Men. Like there was an endless amount of figures related to that, or the TMNT or Ghostbusters figures, even the Star Trek figures from back in the day, the Playmates figures. Oh my gosh, we had tons of those, and they're all gone. And I think to myself, I'm kicking myself. And he has two boys, and for birthdays and Christmas, I always gift like the stuff that I was into at that age and stuff too. So I'm definitely this year I'm gonna spoil them rotten with action figures. And I told him, I'm like, do not, even if they want to sell them for like extra money, don't let them do it. Never let them sell them until they're much older and they're a collector's item and worth something, or they can just then, from a sentimental place, give them to their children. I was like, it is worth so much more. Do not get rid of them, because I'll tell you this: I had the Ghostbusters firehouse, and we used to use that for like, the X-Men lived there.
Yeah.
Like if you were an action figure, you were hanging out at the Ghostbusters firehouse. But I sold it at a garage sale for, I kid you not,
Ooh.
$12. And I'm thinking now, as a hardworking dad, $12
Yeah.
ain't nothing. Like I should never have sold that, because it's worth so much more to me and worth so much more to the geek community from like a collectible perspective. So I think about that almost every day. So yeah, so if you've got stuff like this first issue, this near mint, keep your stuff. Don't sell your stuff, because it's going to be worth something, or even still, it's going to be hold that value for you.
Yeah.
So that's what I got to say about
Shuff, are you a Rob Zombie fan at all?
that. Can't you tell? I mean, don't I
Yeah.
look like a Rob Zombie fan?
Shuff has his Rob Zombie hair all tucked away in his hat.
And the fisters and flames in the back of my head. Dracula.
Well, somebody who perhaps might be a Rob Zombie fan that you were not expecting is old William Shatner himself. Captain Kirk covered a Rob Zombie song, and it sounds
Oh,
very
wow.
interesting. We've got a link in our show notes, but this is a cover of Rob Zombie's "The Great American Nightmare," a track off his 2003 album. Um,
Oh,
Shatner,
man.
I wouldn't expect anything less. It's his career has been all over the place in terms of entertainment value. So him covering a Rob Zombie song
Yeah.
doesn't surprise me at all.
He's been to fake space. He's been to real space. He's been Priceline negotiator. He's sampled Rob Zombie. He's done
Yeah.
everything. He's done
So
everything.
check that out in our show notes, Shaw. That is the Trek News highlights.
Yes. Well, thank you, Captain Vactor. We'll go ahead and transmit those news articles to the show notes for our listeners. Please feel to check them out. We do that with every episode too. So there's plenty of news that we don't talk about that still makes it into the show notes. So if it's your first time joining us, just make sure that you look through that, because there's a lot of great articles, and we try to be your source for Trek news, even if we're not necessarily discussing it in the episode. So very, very cool. All right, now with that, we're going to go ahead and switch gears. We're going to talk about Star Trek Prodigy. This is season 1, episode 14, and the episode was called Crossroads, directed by Steve Ing Chang An and Sung Chin, and written by Lisa Schultz Boyd. Now, before we get into the synopsis, I want to throw up a quick red alert, because we are going to be spoiling the episode. So if you haven't had a chance to watch it and you're, a diehard Prodigy fan or a Star Trek fan, you probably want to see it before we talk about it. So go ahead and press pause on the podcast, check out a previous episode of the pod, or go to Paramount Plus and watch Prodigy, and then come back to us and check out what we thought. Now, with that, the synopsis for this episode is as follows. When the crew attempts to secure transport to the Federation, they unwittingly cross paths with the Vice Admiral who is hunting them. So this episode I watched extremely late last night. And that's because we were in the midst of recording the next installment in our co-captain's commentary, which is Star Trek 3, The Search for Spock. And we had a special guest, a very, very special guest, who is a Star Trek aficionado, as well as many things sci-fi, David Reed. So keep your ears and eyes peeled for that, which will be coming out on December 1st for the next installment of our commentary series. So that's really, really cool. But anyways, we watched that, and then I watched Prodigy, so I was very tired. But I do still remember the episode, so that's good. First and foremost, Vactor, you had a chance to watch it. What did you think
I
of
enjoyed
this
this
episode?
one, a continuation of the storyline and the plot of pushing, our crew forward. Very interesting to see so much Janeway in this episode, the real Janeway rather than the hologram Janeway, Vice Admiral Janeway. So I very much enjoyed Kate Mulgrew's performance as always, and yeah,
Double
yeah,
Janeway,
two
double the
Janeways.
trouble, double the flavor, double the fun, double the
So
Janeway.
this was, I thought, a good episode. Got the evolution of uh, the is it Murph or Merv? What is the alien Murph? Yes.
Murph, yeah,
Got the
Murf,
evolution of
yeah.
Murph. So yeah, I thought this was a good push along um, the timeline of Prodigy.
Yeah, Murph 2.0 is cute. I like him. I like him. It definitely feels like they're borrowing a little bit from like
Oh, yeah.
Grogu, Groot,
Mhm.
like that whole thing. Like it's definitely like he's cute, and I imagine it's probably not the only time he'll go through a metamorphosis, if you know what I mean. Um, this episode was fun. I liked it, and I know that this show definitely is very serialized. Like you can't just
Right.
hop in
Mhm.
to Prodigy. You really have to be following it from day one to truly appreciate it. I'm sure you could watch it, casually and it still would be an enjoyable show, but there'd be a lot you
Right.
wouldn't understand the circumstances of everything. Um, Having Vice Admiral Janeway be such a presence in this and have them finally meet and be face to face, that was really cool. We've been waiting for that for some time now. So, I mean, we think about it, this is only the first season, but she's been chasing them and they've been on the run and all this or that. Like it's the 14th episode of the season and this is the first time they've been like in the same space, face to face with each other. So, so that's pretty cool. And seeing like them being chased through like while in like a transwarp or slipstream warp drive thing,
Yeah.
like that was pretty
That was
fun.
a great action sequence.
That gave me some. I'm blanking on like the vibes, but I feel like I've seen something like that before. That was
Yeah, there might have been something in Star Wars or something where they were chasing in the warp.
yeah.
Yeah, I've felt that. I've seen that in some other yeah, medium before. 100%.
It felt like deja vu, but then you know what? Now that I think about it, maybe it was just footage from Star Trek
Ooh,
Day or something like
yeah,
that.
maybe.
That we're just talking about that. By the way, I just want to throw out. Look, if you haven't seen my shirt yet, if you haven't perused my chesticles, then you don't know. But this is just a fantastic shirt. I love it. I got this shirt like weeks ago, but then my computer started having a whole lot of problems. So we weren't doing any video for a while, but we're
Yeah,
back doing video. And so I was like, okay, for the first episode back, I got to finally wear the shirt that I got really excitedly to wear for the
nice.
circumstances.
Very
So
nice show.
to support, but yeah, the episode was fun. I don't have a whole lot to say other than getting that interaction with Janeway was really, really great. I think the fact that the diviner is on the Dauntless and doesn't. I guess here's my question: do you really think that he doesn't have like his memories are kind of like shaken, or do you think he's
Yeah, I
playing this
thought he was
game?
playing from the beginning, so it'll be interesting to see what he knows and what he doesn't
Yeah,
know.
I'm not sure. Yeah, there are times when I'm watching his performance, and obviously I know it's like it's a CGI thing, but like there are times I'm watching it and I'm like, I feel like he's putting them on, but then there are other times where it feels very convincing that his memories are
Right.
scrambled and he doesn't remember things very well. So, because I would think because his hatred for Starfleet is
Yeah.
pretty dang strong, and to be in the belly of the beast like he is, I, I'm leaning towards that his memories are fragmented because otherwise I feel like he would be trying to like kill
Yeah.
everybody there,
Right.
you know? So, but I also like the approach of them trying to leave the protostar and just find a way to get to Starfleet to warn them. I think like that's the most responsible way to approach
Yeah,
the situation. So it's nice to see that amongst a bunch of kids flying a
right.
vessel. So that was pretty fun. Um, this felt kind of big stakes. It almost felt like it should be closer to like a
Mhm.
finale of
Yeah.
some kind. It was kind of big. So interesting to see where they go from here. But it doesn't sound like we're gonna. It sounds like we're gonna be really barreling forward on the plot because they've had some episodes that felt a little bit more like filler type stuff, but this is really getting driving home the main plot line of the chase um, and then the issue of going into the neutral zone and potentially starting an all-out war with the Romulans, like pretty cool
Yeah, I
stuff.
thought the ending was very good. The point in which they ended it, very good cliffhanger.
Yeah, absolutely. Right about that point was when I almost passed out, and it ended so abruptly that I had to replay it because I was like, "Oh, was that it?" Like I like fell asleep for like a
Mhm.
microsecond, and then suddenly the credits were playing. I was like, what just happened? So anyways, but yeah, great episode. I am enjoying Prodigy. I do want to put it out there to you, Vector. We talked about this. Um, we're recognizing that the Prodigy show itself is not an extreme draw for our listeners. So I just wanted to put it out there to our listeners to get some feedback. If you're not watching Prodigy and you would prefer us spending our time talking about something else Star Trek related, we would love for you to reach out to us. In our show notes at the way bottom, there is a section where you can leave us a voicemail, and that is the perfect way to do it. So it you basically you sign in on Anchor. It's just like you have to create like a username and password, I think, and then you go in and you can record a voicemail, and then we'll get that instantaneously. It'll notify us, and then not only can we listen to it, but we can also add it to our podcast episode, so you'll be able to hear yourself on there, which is pretty fun because then you're now part of the podcast team in that sense, and you're also providing us feedback so we know what you want to hear and talk about. Because if we're talking about Prodigy and nobody wants to hear about Prodigy, then we want to talk about something else. Um, so yeah, our friend and Trek talker John Daranowski has done that a couple of times and left us some voicemails, and we love that. So he was actually the one who introduced us to Prodigy and told us it was worth our time. So we are definitely watching it because we listen to our listeners. So with that in mind, tell us what you want us to review or talk about. If you want us to go back and do TOS or TNG, DS9, Voyager, whatever, like we're into it. You just have to reach out and engage with us so we know what you want to hear. Um, any final thoughts about the episode,
No,
Vector?
I just thought it was a good, solid episode of Prodigy, and I'm it's keeping me engaged, no pun intended, and I'm enjoying it so far.
Love it. Love it. Okay, cool. Well, folks, that's our episode discussion, but that's not it because now we're going to switch gears and we're going to talk about one of my favorite things. I know Vector loves this too, but we're both hardworking dads, as we said, and our weeks are pretty jam packed with our jobs and being attentive husbands and fathers to our children. So, with that in mind, we like to share maybe some lessons or stories, funny stories, anecdotes, things like that from our time as fathers. So we call this boldly dadding, and we are going to go ahead and share about that. So with that, let's go ahead and switch over to boldly dadding, and let's hear from Vactor first. What's your dad moment of the past week?
Well, I have never been one to think about finances growing up. I was well off, and my parents were well off, so I never thought about financial education as a child. It was just I was fortunate enough to that was not one of my worries in life. But as
Okay.
I've grown older and as I've kind of researched more and more about financial education, it's something that I kind of wish I had more of when I was growing up, in the sense of just knowing about it and understanding more of finances than I do. And so I wanted to kind of take this moment and talk about what I want to pass down to my son. And we have actually a quote from um, your friend of mine, Dave Ramsey, financial educator.
Ooh,
The lottery is a tax on poor people and on people who can't do math. Rich people and smart people would be in the line if the lottery were a real wealth building tool. But the truth is that the lottery is a ripoff instituted by our government. This is not a moral position, is a mathematical statistical fact. Studies show that the zip codes that spend 4 times what anyone else does on lottery tickets are those in lower income parts of town. The lottery or gambling of any kind offers false hope and is not a ticket out. And we had some kind of lottery craze recently
preach.
where it was, "Oh, the lottery's hit 4 billion," or whatever it was. I don't even know what it hit recently, but everyone at work that I work with was going crazy. "Oh, did you buy a lottery ticket? Did you buy a lottery ticket?" "Yeah, I'm gonna go buy one after work." And I'm just, like, shaking my head thinking, "Why? Why is it such a big
Right.
deal to buy a lottery ticket? The chances of winning the lottery are so small, and giving you that sense, that false hope." And actually, that was something that my parents actually my mom in particular, she still plays the lottery to this day, always kind of had that dream of, "Oh, yeah, we're gonna hit it big, we're gonna win the lottery." But if you look at even the people who win the lottery, just, Google lottery winners, basically, you can see the suicide rates are up, the
Right.
just the amount of people who, after they win the lottery, go broke within 7 years.
Yes.
And the reason is because those people who win the lottery, like Dave Ramsey was saying, they're from poor zip codes and poor, they just have a poor mindset. So even once they get the wealth, they lose it right away, and
Yeah. Yeah.
it's just I don't want my son to think, "Oh, yeah, that's a great hope that I can have of winning the lottery." I'd rather him have a strong financial education and a strong basis to know that that's not your ticket out. That's not the way out. So I'm going to be educating my son as much as possible and things that I was never taught in school or at home.
Mhm.
And that's just one of those ways that I'm going to be teaching him is the lottery is not the way out, basically. It's just not. So, I'm kudos to Dave Ramsey. A lot of his teachings financially, I am agreeing in agreeance with. So, I'm gonna kinda pass those down to him once he's old enough. But I'm gonna do it from the
Yeah.
start, from when he's very young, because like I said, I never had that growing up. So that's gonna be one of those things that I want him to be a strong all-around person, but financial is one key aspect of his life that I want to be strong.
I love that. That's great. That's a great approach as a father, because you're right. There's not enough education in schools. There should be a class, like as important as knowing about manifest destiny and world
Yes,
history and all that
right.
junk. Like I would say, knowing about the Louisiana Purchase is not nearly as important as uh, knowing how to balance a
Yes,
checkbook, or knowing what a credit card is, or how your credit score is
right.
determined, things like that, like all that stuff. And like you said, the lottery is a tax on poor people, absolutely. It's it's really interesting and very unfortunate, and I've been on both sides. Like I've been on the side of where I wasn't very educated, and I suffered for it. And I've had to dig myself out of multiple holes over the years, and now I'm in a much better place, and I refuse to let myself get back down in that hole. So it takes a lot of dedication, a lot of resolve, and but it's worth it. So if you're going to start him young that way, he's going to be set for success, and that's great. So that's awesome. Great. Love it. For myself, I had a whole bunch of things and I wasn't really sure which one I wanted to pick. But I mentioned that Sage has a teething cold. So she's been a bit irritable this past week, and very clingy. She wants to be held at all times. If you put her down for even like 30 seconds, she reacts and she wants to be picked up. So that's been a little bit of a challenge. And just kind of dealing with that. I also just got a I don't want to call it a promotion, but like a shift in my responsibilities with work. Um, and I do like quality control for a bank, but they switch me from a certain type of work to a different type of work. And with that comes training. And whenever I have training, that means I'm that much more locked into my computer and being in my office. And that means I'm not really able to help out as a dad as much because I need to be on calls, or I'm shadowing somebody. Like I don't have the luxury of getting up and from my desk and going and helping with a diaper change or lunchtime or whatever. Like I can't do any of that stuff. So that's hard for me because I like to be an attentive father, and so it was hard for me to sort of like keep my butt in my chair despite hearing the cries in the background through the walls. Like working from home, it's a challenge. Anybody that's like, oh, I want to work from home, I love you, you're so lucky you get to work from home. It's not a cakewalk. It's not even remotely a cakewalk. The grass is always greener on the other side. I love being home, but I also sometimes am like, I could be a lot more productive if I was in the office, because it would be out of sight, out of mind.
Mm.
I wouldn't know what kind of conflict or stuff would be going on at the house, and I could just focus. But that doesn't exist. So you got to wear both hats at the same time. You got to be a dad, you got to be a husband, you got to be a worker, all at the same time. So that can be a challenge. Our nanny told us that she's not going to be with us after the end of this month, which is really unfortunate because we were really leaning on her help. My daughter Emily, who's 2, she's been having troubles going down for naps. She doesn't go down for bedtime without a fight. Uh, so that's been a challenge. My wife and I decided to call it at 2 kids. We're not going to have any more children. Despite we loving having kids and everything, 2 is a good place to stop. It's nice to not be um, outnumbered by your children. I give it up and mad props to anybody who are parents and they have beyond 2 children. I also give props to any parent in general, but like the more kids, just the more chaos is really what it is. And that's not me being like rude or insensitive. That's just being honest. Like your life changes with each child. It changes and morphs a little bit. And beyond 2, when you're outnumbered and you don't have any support, you don't have parents who live nearby, you don't have grandparents who live nearby, you don't have any friends where you're at. We just moved to Washington, so it's like these are challenges, and we're doing it all on our own.
Mm.
And if I didn't have such a strong partner like I do, my wife is amazing. Then I don't see how this would even work. Um, so it is what it is every single week, but we try to make it work because our kids are awesome and we want to be there for them, and we want to make sure that they grow up and are properly nurtured to be the best versions of themselves, and don't have shame around things, that they feel proud and confident. So yeah, but then the only other thing, and this is the funny part, I wanted to end with a funny one. Emily has been noticing something about me, and she brings it up to me almost every time I'm near her. And she's been very observant about my physical appearance. And she's noticing more and more about my hair. Specifically, she says I have really hairy arms. I have really big, hairy arms. She loves to talk about my hairy arms. Which is just, I'm like, okay, now I'm more self-conscious. I'm like, are they really that hairy? She comments about my beard. She's like, really, really hairy beard. I was changing, so she saw me without a shirt on, and she saw I had chest hair. She's like, and she talked about my chest hair and being very, very hairy. And then she said that my booty was hairy.
What?
I was like, who told you that? I was like, have you been talking to mommy? She's not supposed to tell you those things. that is my own secrets. So, I was laughing. I was like, she said hairy booty. And I was laughing so hard. So she's definitely a character. She's a goofball, and I love that about her. But she's all about the hair right now. So yeah. If you come over to my house, you better shave. That's all I gotta say.
Hey. Yeah, I'm the
Well,
same
folks,
I'm the same way, Shoff. I not by my son yet, but
yeah.
I remember in pictures on Instagram, people would ask me if I had a tattoo sleeve on my arm, just because the way the picture would turn out, the hair on my arm, it would look like a tattoo. So, like,
Oh my gosh.
from from wrist to elbow, and people were like, "Did you get a tattoo?" And I was like, "What? That's my arm hair." It's like, you can clearly see it, but yeah, so I'm the same
Do you
way.
do you have any tattoos?
I do not. My wife and I both have talked about getting matching, Dragon Ball tattoos, something either Star Wars or Dragon Ball. My wife has a Darth Vader tattoo on her back, but, I currently do not have any.
Oh, okay. I've been jonesing for some ink. I might get some done, and it's probably gonna be very geeky. Like, it's gonna be, I know for sure at one point I wanna get, you know how when, I wanna say it was during Infinity War, maybe? All the main Avengers got the same tattoo.
Oh,
Do
yeah.
you remember that story?
Yeah.
So I wanna get that tattoo,
Ah,
just out of my love and appreciation for Marvel.
yeah.
Um, and then I also wanna get something Star Trek related, probably the Delta symbol in some shape or
Nice.
form. I'd like to get something like Super Mario related. Like, I wanna
Nice.
go,
Yeah.
like, and just, like, geekify
Yeah.
my body in some way, shape, or form. But I really love tattoos. I just don't have any currently. My wife has a couple, one on her
Yeah.
wrist, one on the back
And
of her, neck.
I've always wanted one, but I'm the type of guy that I change my wallpaper on my computer almost daily because I just get tired of looking at the same thing. So that's what I always thought of for tattoos growing up. I was like, "Man, I really want one, but I can't decide on one that I would want permanently. I would want it to change every day."
Oh, wow,
So
yeah.
that's really the only reason why I haven't got one.
You gotta wait for that technology, I guess.
Ooh,
They'll probably do that at some point. Tattoos that just change or whatever,
that
or
would
you can
be
just
nice.
you scan it. Or I don't know. They'll come up with something.
Yeah.
I'm sure they will. Well, I think you had an awesome dad moment to share, and I'm going to do the same with my kids. They're going to get that financial advice too,
Yeah.
because no repeats, no repeats. Generational karma is going to be stopped. We're going to rewrite the what's break the wheel, right?
Yeah.
And do things the right way.
Right.
So, anyways, thank you all so much for listening to our episode. Of course, we are on a few different forms of social media: Instagram, Twitter, and TikTok. You can find us at TREKnopod. That's TREKNOPOD. We would love, love, love if you would subscribe to our show, not only on your various podcast platforms that you listen to us on, but also we're on YouTube. And if you're interested in the video portion of our podcast, which is a lot of fun, and we're going to be doing that a lot more, then that's where YouTube and TikTok are going to come in real handy for you. So make sure to look for us on there. And a quick shout out to a friend of mine, former coworker, who recently became a monthly supporter of our podcast on Anchor, which is an option. So you can not only can you leave us voicemails, but you can also become a monthly supporter and pledge a certain amount of money towards our efforts. And we really do appreciate that. And I'm never going to be like, we need this like in a desperate way, like support us, support us, support us. We want your money. But if you're enjoying us and you'd like us to continue and continue to grow, then it would be awesome if you would support us that way too. So thank you to my dear friend Tony. I'm not going to say his last name just for out of respect, but Tony E. Tony E. Thank you
Thank
so
you,
much, Tony
Tony.
E. If you enjoyed what you heard today, like we said, subscribe to the show, and if you loved it, maybe take that one step further and rate us 5 stars on the platform if it allows for you to do so. Spotify and Apple Podcasts will let you do that. And then if you're on Apple Podcasts, you can also leave us a review, and we love those too. We'll share those on the podcast on future episodes as well. Knowing that Star Trek is kind of a family thing, and oftentimes you're sharing this passion with another person in your family or maybe a friend, let them know about our podcast. Maybe they're not familiar and they'd like to listen too. That would be a great way to help grow our audience in a very natural, organic way. So thank you so much. we're going to continue on next week and barrel through our Star Trek Prodigy Season 1 recap and review, unless you tell us otherwise. But with that, Captain Vactor, I believe our mission of the week is complete. Schaffen Vactor here, 2 to beam up.
Live long and prosper.
Yeah.